Now, Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich has appeared before the National Assembly's Budget and Appropriation Committee in relation to Treasury's failure to remit funds to some key sectors of the economy. Rotich says that the country's lack of sufficient revenue to meet cash demands, but said the problem has been blown out of proportion. Let us now cross over to Parliament and take a look at the ongoing proceedings.
This apparently was not...
we can't hear you, Member for Seme. Please speak into the microphone.
Yeah, the last time that we passed the supplementary budget, it was late, and therefore it was not implemented, and therefore it went as the first charge in the current budget. The implication that it was paid. How has this affected the current expenditure? You also indicated that you passed, that there was a bill that was sent to Parliament, an excise bill that was also was expected to help raise revenue. I didn't hear whether the non-passage of the bill or how that has affected the collection of revenue now.
Member for Gatundu North.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. Most of my questions have been put forward. To the Cabinet Secretary, my worry is about the proposed syndicate loan. It's about the 70 billion. What is really the real effective rate? My other worry is about the Global Market for Authority. What is the real status of the Euro board? Will the rise in this US interest make tapping of this resource difficult? Will we attain what we would expect to attain? And in view of the projected GDP, that is actually, in view of the more than projected GDP, what is going to be our position on the revenue front? And finally, what are your other alternative strategies to intervene in the current crisis, or the current situation we are in, not a crisis, the current hard situation we are in? And when are you releasing our CDF money? Thank you.
Cabinet Secretary, National Treasury, you have the floor. And 10 minutes to answer all those questions because we must clear by 1:15. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, let me try to respond to most of the questions. Obviously, some is in the note. Probably one needs to digest a little bit what I've provided so that it's fully appreciated. Now, I think the first question was, I'll go systematically the way it came. The question on by the MP for Narok on the effect of the local banks of on the syndicated loan. Let me mention that the syndicated loan that we are looking at is that we are intending to borrow in foreign countries to bring in. Because we are actually moving away from the domestic market. This is going to be borrowed from international, most of it, so what it will do is just to add foreign exchange to the country, because we are getting forex from outside, and of course we are displacing domestic borrowing, which would have actually would have borrowed domestically, and which would have raised interest rates. So the effect of that is that interest rates will begin to subside, and because we are now externalizing, or we are actually borrowing from outside instead of locally, but still the same magnitude we are looking at. All what we do is just substituting and borrowing from externally, and the rates are much favorable. Outside there is still liquidity from the raising money from international market at a much lower rates than what is obtaining currently in the domestic market. Now, on the annuity program, this has faced a bit of challenges, and I think the Ministry of Roads can provide more details on the current status. But when we went to this approach, what came up was that the costing of some of them were pretty high. Obviously, there are two components in this one. The way it was structured is that there was the construction cost, and there was the maintenance cost, and there was the financing cost. So typically in the old approach, the financing cost was not there because it was financed through the budget, through allocations. But these ones were going to, the contractors were going to borrow and finance the road, and then we pay annuities over a period of time. So looking at some of those costs, because we were expecting banks also to borrow externally and bring cheap money so that to lower the ultimate cost. So most of the local contractors who are borrowing locally, and the interest rates locally are high, and that undermine that program. There have been negotiations to see, even without bringing in the financing cost and maintenance, the construction cost turned out actually to be even a little bit higher. I think the challenge was that you left the contractors to go and design a road. The designs that came out was designs that sometimes were not actually commensurate with the roads that we wanted to build. We were looking at the road, in some of the roads in our rural areas. The designs there were over-designed, meant for, because contractors were worried about the traffic flows. And maybe they will say, okay, if we do, 1 or 2, 3 layers, probably there will be too many usage, and then I'll pay the maintenance cost. So that created a challenge. The typical roads that we were paying through the old approach, the cost became too high, but we attributed this to over designs by contractors. Some were designing roads which have street lights, pavements, and all that, and they are in the rural areas. So typically that was not the intention. So I think with those challenges now, we felt that if we have to implement this, it might be very costly. So negotiations, trying to tell contractors, design it in this way. This is so there was a lot of guidance, and then that has delayed the whole program. And again, now we will achieve a lot in terms of bringing the cost down. But the negotiations are still continuing in negotiations on some specific roads. I might not be able to give the details, and I think these ones we can gather more from the Ministry of Infrastructure and Roads. But that basically was the challenge on that end. On the issue of the measures on revenue, it was a deficit. I think this was raised by the Vice Chair here. Let me say that we fully provided how it was going to be financed. We said we are raising 1.2 trillion from tax revenue, and we were going to borrow 220. And so the budget was fully financed with all the deficits that were there. And I mentioned earlier on that we are progressively going to bring down the deficit to 4% in the medium term. But because of the requirements of the infrastructure, and this is what most countries are doing, taking advantage of the global environment to implement infrastructure programs, because we have huge infrastructure deficits, and we have to invest. Our deficit here includes the standard gauge, which is about 2 percentage points of GDP on its own. But we have to do the railway, but it has funding. This has funding from China. So in the deficit it might show high, but below the line which is it's already funded through a Chinese loan and all that. So I would say that the deficits were fully funded, but obviously we look at it, the deficit vis-a-vis in the long term. Is it going to be sustainable? And I think the PS has clearly brought about the issue of debt. Whether when we say our debt is sustainable, what parameters are we looking at? So this is how we look, and then I think we presented to this House a medium-term which was tabled here. And I think we even asked we can have a meeting again to go over a special session on actually debt, and we don't mind going for a retreat. We explain all issues about debt. Now, there was an issue about, what are we doing with KRA. I think I had outlined several measures, but just on this issue about corruption in KRA, I think it's a very important issue. We have also we have had people bringing attention to us that there are challenges on KRA staff in terms of what we are planning is that we thought we are developing sort of a vetting mechanism. I think this has worked in the police. We are discussing with KRA a mechanism where we can vet all officers in KRA to ensure that this issue of corruption is dealt with conclusively, because I think we will want the support also of the committee to ensure that that proposal is actually taken through, to ensure that we do a fresh vetting to all KRA staff. On the issue of, I think, let me clarify on the withholding tax. There have been a little bit of a challenge. First, it's not 16%. It is the withholding that we introduced was only 6%. We have seen this challenge, and I think I mentioned in my presentation that we are strengthening the domestic tax department at the KRA. There are contractors which are not actually withholding. In fact, KRA has requested we use the IFMIS to see who we are paying and who are not withholding this. So we will provide that data to KRA to ensure that all people doing business with government are ensure that we withhold 6% on that. I think on the issue of interest rates and how it has affected annuity, yes, obviously, as I said, the financing costs were already too high.
Time is getting a bit tricky.
Before the interest rates rose much recently. So obviously, that has created a problem. But I want to say that the reason why domestic borrowing with external borrowing is precisely to bring down the cost of borrowing. Because if we continue borrowing domestically, we will raise interest rates, and then the private sector will not access credit. So it's important that the initiatives that is done quickly.
I think we will need to have another session, clearly. So if you cannot finish all the questions, I think we will understand, because it's 1:15 and we really need to vacate. Make one final comment and then we...
Well, I don't know whether that will do justice to the people who asked the questions. I thought I wanted to respond them.
I'm under instructions.
We are available.
Are you available Thursday next week?
Yeah, but I just, yes.
Thursday next week, 11 o'clock?
Yes.
PBO, please do the letter so that we have more time next Thursday. Final comment, and then we...
Yeah, I think the final comment, I just want to say that the current challenge that we are facing is a temporary problem. As I said earlier, that this came about because of the issues we had to respond, especially on the interest and the exchange rate. I brought out clearly what is happening from the global scenario in terms of the tightening of liquidity. This has manifested itself in the local domestic financial markets, and interest rates had to go up to deal with the challenge of exchange rate. We have discussed this situation so that liquidity can become available, and this is the coordination that we are also talking. And it's also a global development. I think the advice coming out all over is that we don't need to respond so strongly on the exchange rate until we have to pay any price domestically by raising rates. So that I think we have had to suffer that price just because we wanted to keep exchange rate so that the exchange rate does not depreciate, like how it has happened in other countries. I gave an example of South Africa, Ghana. They actually weakened almost 100%. So I just want to assure everybody that there are no, this concern about liquidity crisis is not really there.
Allow me to interrupt. Are you free on Tuesday at 11 next week?
It's a holiday.
Oh, it's a holiday. Thursday, 11 o'clock. Please, sorry. It's just that time is not on our side. So please.
We are available to clarify any time on the issue. And
yeah. So 11 o'clock on Thursday, then we have more time because obviously we are a bit rushed. Majority Leader, you had something to say?
Just one clarification, Chair. When I was watching, I'm happy the Minister and his team are here because the country wanted to know what is all about. But as I was watching, you said Parliament will fast-track the memoranda from the President on the excise duty. But I want to make it very clear here that even if we do that memoranda this afternoon, the excise duty that was passed before we went on recess will not come into effect until we deal with the tax procedure bill before the House. So I want to make that clarification, and we will fast-track the tax procedure. So once that one is signed, is assented to, then the excise duty bill can come into operation. But the memorandum is so that should not be a reason why we have issues. So what I can only do is to fast-track the tax procedure bill for the excise duty to come into effect.
Well, honourable members, let me take this opportunity to thank Cabinet Secretary Treasury for coming and for the engagement, interaction that we've had. Obviously, the time was not